Hi, thank you, Numu, for inviting me here tonight, and everyone in the audience for supporting the arts. You are awesome. Um, for those of you who aren't familiar with my work, I'm a photo-based artist who focuses on environmental issues relevant to the inhabitants of the Silicon Valley. I'm here in Palo Alto. I have a studio, and I'm an artist in resident at CASP, which is the City of Palo Alto's Coverly Artist Studio program, and I've been here for about 7 years. I originally started out as a painter, and I think this shows up in the formal qualities of my work, which can be both vivid and abstract. The salt pond grid number 2 that's in the exhibit is from my series that I began in 2010 when I first went up in a helicopter to document the dramatic changes that are taking place in our San Francisco Bay. This is the largest wetlands restoration in the United States happening in our own backyard. And I go up once a year in a helicopter to photograph. And most recently, during COVID, I've started photographing from the ground several ponds that are under active restoration, where the transformation from industrial salt ponds into diverse habitats for birds, fish, and small mammals is just beginning. I remember distinctly when I went back to explore and photograph the Ravenswood ponds right after the shelter-in-place order ended in May. My experience of the colors and textures of this already very surreal landscape was really heightened after what seemed like many months of sensory deprivation. The desolate landscape resonated with me because of some of the trauma I had been going through, like many of us, being separated from loved ones and especially my students. I teach photography and art full-time and have the high school, having the high school shut down so suddenly, I did not have closure with my 160 students, many of whom I was very worried about and would not see again. While photographing the Ravenswood, and next slide, sorry. While photographing the Ravenswood site, I found that my external and internal landscapes lined up. I felt like I had found the perfect reflection of my internal reality living outside of myself. The Ravenswood ponds border the Facebook campus in Menlo Park, and many of these sleek buildings look out directly onto the ponds. In this high salinity environment, as the ponds start to dehydrate in warmer weather, plant forms encrusted with layers of salt begin to appear, and the orange colored algae that gives these images their very distinct color palette. Next slide. Last August, my husband and I set out on a trip for a couple of weeks in the Ansel Adams wilderness at a cabin in the High Sierra. Experiencing the pristine wilderness was healing, and the evidence of deep time in the glacial lakes we swam in, and ancient rock formations was soothing. I found myself photographing the red fir, bristlecone pine, and lodgepole pine that flagged our hikes like sentinels, and I enjoyed the idea of sharing my breath with these beings who experience time so differently from us. As we were packing up to leave, a local resident came by and I asked him if he ever worried about the fire danger and the remoteness of this location, as it's above 8,000 feet, where everything is really brittle and incredibly dry. He brushed aside my concerns, and this conversation turned out to be very prescient, as the creek fire ravaged this area less than 2 weeks after our trip. These composited images are from this trip to the Ansel Adams Wilderness and were inspired by a poem that I wrote about the fire. In the poem, I tried to imagine what the trees would say to us if they were speaking to us from the future. I'm currently working on a video installation that includes imagery from other locations ravaged by fire in California. And the complete poem will be included in the poem's titled "We Tried to Warn You." I'm enjoying the process of imagining what the trees' voices would sound like and the soundscapes they would be inhabiting in the future. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my work with you. And thanks so much, Numu.